Number 47, I said number 47, or step aside. The whole eatery turned to look at the man holding the little plastic tag. Tall, black coat, watch worth more than the building. Behind him, through the glass, 3 black cars sat double-parked with their engines running and 4 men in dark suits standing outside like statues, because inside this building they were not allowed. "Sir," the young waitress pointed at the counter. "Phone, face down, house rule." He didn't move. She didn't blink. Somewhere behind him, an old woman clicked her tongue and said, "Ehen, so it's only him that has work? We're all waiting." And Yoon Jae-yuk, the man who had not queued for anything in 19 years, the man whose secretary scheduled his water breaks, put his phone face down on the counter, picked up a plastic tray, and moved forward 1 step like everybody else. If you're wondering what could bring a man like that to a small African eatery in Seoul, standing in line at 11:40 in the morning with soup steam on his glasses, stay with me, because it started with a missing card in a grocery store queue and an insult that a mother should never have heard. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Let me take you back to that morning. Madame Jung Oknam did not leave her house without her face being correct. That was not vanity in her opinion. Vanity was for women who had nothing else. Madame Oknam had raised a son alone, buried a husband at 31, worked in a laundry until her knuckles cracked in winter, and she had decided somewhere in those years that whatever else the world took from her, it would not take the way she looked walking into a room. So at 63, her hair was set. Her lipstick was a soft coral, her scarf was silk, and it was tied the way her mother had taught her, with the knot sitting slightly to the left. That Tuesday morning, she drove herself to the Hanmart on the main road in Yongsan, parked, and reached into her purse for her small round mirror, because the wind on the expressway had been serious, and she needed to see what it had done to her. She dug. Her purse was a deep one with too many pockets, and the mirror had gone to the bottom the way small things do. She pushed aside a packet of tissues, a folded receipt, a little bottle of hand cream. Her fingers found the mirror and she pulled it out fast, and something slid out with it over the lip of the purse and dropped somewhere in the footwell in that soft way that plastic does not announce. She checked her face. The wind had done exactly what she feared. She fixed it. She snapped the mirror shut, dropped it back in, took her purse and her bag for the groceries and went inside. She was cooking for her son that evening. That was the whole reason for the trip. Jae-yuk had said 3 days earlier, in the middle of typing something into his phone, that he could not remember the last time he ate at home, and he had said it the way people say things they do not expect to be acted upon. Madame Oknam had acted upon it before he finished the sentence, so she took her time in that store. She pressed the beef with her thumb. She smelled the sesame oil cap. She stood in front of the mushrooms for 4 minutes because the good ones were at the back, and she was not a woman who took what was in front. She picked spring onions, tofu, a radish the length of her forearm, garlic, chili paste, and a small punnet of strawberries because her son had liked strawberries when he was 7, and she had never fully accepted that he had stopped being 7. Her basket was heavy by the time she got to the counter. There were 6 people behind her. The cashier was a young woman named Bae Hyo-rin, who had been on shift since 6, who had been shouted at twice already that morning by a man over a coupon, and who had decided somewhere around 10 o'clock that she was no longer going to be the one absorbing things. The scanner beeped through the items. The total came up. Madame Oknam opened her purse. The card was not in the front pocket. She checked the second pocket. She checked the zip. She checked the front pocket again, which is what everybody does, because the mind refuses to accept a thing the first time. "Ma'am." One moment. She took the tissues out. She took the hand cream out. She held them in her left hand while her right hand went through the lining. Her fingers had started to move faster than her thinking. "Ma'am, the total is there." "I have it. It's here. I used it on Sunday." "Madam." Hyo-rin's voice rose, and it carried because that store had high ceilings and nothing to absorb sound. "You're holding the line. Do you have money or you don't have money?" Something happened to the air. 6 people behind her, and every one of them stopped being a stranger waiting and became an audience. "At her age," a woman said, not even quietly. "They should give her a chair. somebody else said, and there was a laugh, small, but it was there, and a laugh in a queue is a door opening. Then a man in a beige jacket, a man named Guman Shik who sold phone accessories 2 streets down and who had a joke for every occasion whether the occasion wanted one or not, leaned over to his friend and said, at exactly the volume of a man who wants to be heard, "Maybe it's in her wallet and she can't remember." The laugh that time was not small. Madame Oknam's hands stopped moving. She was standing in a supermarket with a radish in her basket that she had chosen for her son, and her hands were shaking and she could feel her own heartbeat in her jaw. She did not turn around. She had a rule about not turning around. Her chin lifted the way a proud woman's chin lifts when she is deciding in real time that she will not cry in front of strangers. "I'll take the beef off," she said, "just the beef, then I'll have enough coins." "Ma'am, if you're going to remove items I have to void the whole—" "Say that again." The voice came from the back of the line. Everybody turned. The woman who stepped out of that queue was in her early 30s, in a simple wax print blouse with the sleeves pushed up, hair wrapped, a basket of onions and dried fish on her arm. She was not shouting. That was the frightening part. She walked up along the side of the queue at a completely normal speed and stopped beside Gu Manshik and looked at him the way a teacher looks at a boy who has just realized which teacher he is dealing with. "You, say the joke again, loud, so everybody can hear it properly." Manshik developed an interest in the floor. "No, say it. It was funny before. Say it again." "I was only—" "Be careful," she said, and she said it quietly, and it went through that whole store like cold water. "You are not talking to your mates. That is somebody's mother. That is your mother tomorrow in another shop with another queue behind her. Every one of you standing here will be old if you're lucky. If you're lucky." Nobody said anything. She turned to the cashier. "How much?" "Ma'am, How much?" Hyorin told her the amount, in a voice that had lost every bit of its height. The woman put her own basket on the counter, took out her card, and paid for a stranger's groceries. Then she picked up 2 of the bags herself, the heavy ones, handed Madame Oknam the lighter one and said, "Come, Ma." They walked out together. The queue stayed silent behind them in a way that queues almost never do. Outside, the morning was bright and the traffic on the main road was doing what it always did. Madame Oknam stopped on the pavement and turned around and started to speak and found that the first thing that came out was not a thank you. "I'm sorry," she said. The younger woman blinked. "For what?" "For what you heard in there." "For all that. You came to buy your things and you had to stand in the middle of that." Her voice was not fully under her control yet. "That is not— this country is not— I don't want you to think. Ma, I want you to know that it is not everybody. Ma, it's fine." "It is not fine." "It's fine," the woman said, and she smiled and she shifted the bags in her hand. "Don't mind them. I'm used to insults like this." She said it the way somebody says the weather is cold, no drama in it at all, and that flat, ordinary way she said it was the thing that stayed with Madame Oknam later, at night, long after she had stopped thinking about the cashier and the man in the beige jacket. "What is your name?" "Tracy. Tracy Joe." "Tracy." Madame Oknam took her hand and held it with both of hers. "Come to my house on Sunday. I'll cook for you. Whatever you want, I'll cook it. I want to thank you properly." "Ma, no, there's no need." "There is need. There's no need." Tracy was still smiling, but she had gently taken her hand back. "I didn't do that for a plate of soup or rice." "I know you didn't. That's exactly why—" "Ma." "Sunday, just Sunday, one afternoon." Tracy looked at her for a second. Then she laughed, and the laugh was warm and low, and it changed her whole face. "You're stubborn." "I've been told." "Fine." Tracy shifted the bags to one arm, dug into her back pocket, and came out with a small card, slightly bent at one corner. She put it in Madame Oknam's palm and closed her fingers over it. "That's my place. Tracy's Kitchen, Adawan, on the small street behind the bank. If you really want to thank me, don't cook for me. Come and buy from me. Bring your appetite and bring your money. That is how you thank a business owner." Madame Oknam looked at the card and then at her, and something in her chest that had been shaking since the counter finally sat down. "I'll come," she said. "I'll be there," said Tracy. "I'm always there." Yoon Jae-hyuk got home that night at 9 minutes past 9. He came in the way he came in every night, coat over his arm, tie already loosened, the last call of the day still finishing in his ear, 412 stores worth of numbers still stacked behind his eyes. Yusung Holdings did not stop moving because the sun went down. He had a board meeting on Thursday, a supplier renegotiation that was going badly, and a logistics contract in Busan that 3 people had already lied to him about. His mother was in the kitchen. The house smelled like beef and garlic and something sweet. "You're late." I said 9. "You said 8. I said 9, Mother. Sit down." He sat. She put the food in front of him and stood there with her arms folded while he ate the first 3 mouthfuls, which was her way, and then she sat down across from him and said, "Something happened to me today." At the Han Mart. My card fell out in the car and I didn't know." He looked up. "You couldn't pay?" "I couldn't pay." She smoothed the tablecloth with one hand. The girl at the counter shouted at me, in front of everybody, and the people on the line were laughing at me. One man said maybe the card is in my wallet and I can't remember. Jae-hyuk put down his spoon. "Who?" "It doesn't matter who." "Mother, it doesn't matter." She waved it off. "What matters is this. A woman came out of that queue, a black woman, Nigerian. She warned all of them to be careful. She said they were not talking to their mates, and then she paid for my food with her own money and carried my bags outside. My bags. And when I tried to apologize, she said I shouldn't mind, that she is used to insults like this." She stopped there, and she was quiet for a moment. "That is what has been troubling me since, that she is used to it." Jae-hyuk was watching his mother's hands. "I invited her for Sunday. She refused. She said she didn't do it for a plate of soup or rice." A small, admiring sound in his mother's throat. "So I begged her and she gave me a card. She owns an eatery in Itaewon. She said if I want to thank her, I should come and buy from her." "Then buy from her." "I will, and you will go too." Jae-hyuk, I'm saying you should stop by when you have time and thank the woman." "Yes." His mother's eyes narrowed. He knew in the half second after he said it that he had said it too fast. He had said it the way a man closes a file. He had meant it as an ending and she had heard it as one. "Yes?" "Yes, Mother." "Just like that. Yes." "You said thank her." I said yes. "You said yes the way you say yes to the tax office." She sat back. "You are not going anywhere." "I have a board meeting on Thursday." "Ah." She threw one hand up. "The board meeting. Every year it is the same board meeting. Does this board ever finish? What do they do in there? Are they knitting?" "Mother. You know what happened to me today, Jae-hyuk? I'll tell you what happened. I was insulted by people young enough to be my children, and a stranger had to defend me. A stranger." She leaned forward. "You know what would not have happened if I had grandchildren?" He closed his eyes. "Here we go." "That. Mother, how—" He opened his eyes. He genuinely wanted to know. He was tired enough to ask. "How? How would a grandchild have changed the card falling out of your purse in a car?" "Because a grandchild would have been with me." She said it like she was explaining that water was wet. "A grandchild would have carried the purse. A grandchild would have said, 'Halmione, your card is on the floor of the car,' and I would have picked it up and there would have been no story. But I don't have a grandchild. I have a board meeting. So instead, a stranger paid for my radish while my mates laughed at me. That is not—" He pressed his fingers to the bridge of his nose. "That is not connected. Those two things are not connected. They are extremely connected. Every single thing in the world is connected to grandchildren for you. If it rains, if you had a wife, you would own an umbrella." "I'm going to bed." He stood up. He got as far as picking up his coat. "So you're leaving my food?" He stopped. "You're leaving it," she said to the tablecloth. "Fine, that's fine. I woke up at 7. I drove myself to Yongsan because the beef at the small shop is not good enough for you. I stood in that store for 1 hour choosing mushrooms. The ones at the back, I don't take the ones in front. You know I don't take the ones in front. And I was insulted in public, in front of 6 people, because of this food. Because of you. That is the only reason I went out today. For you." She looked up. And now you want to waste it. I'm not wasting it. I ate 3 spoons. I ate more than 3 spoons. I counted. He sat back down, because there was no version of this where he did not sit back down. Do you know what I have done for you? She said, and her voice had changed, and this was the part that always got through, because she did not perform it. She just said it. Your father died and left me at 31 with a boy who could not tie his own shoes. Everybody told me to remarry. My own sister brought a man to my house. A good man, actually. He had a shop. And I said no because a new husband would have wanted his own children, and I was not going to divide myself. I was not going to give you half of me. So I took one child and I gave him all of it. All of it, Jae-hyuka. She tapped the table twice. And now the child is a big man and I sit in this house and the only sound in it is the television. He looked at his plate for a long moment. Mother, I just got back from the office, he said. I'm tired. I had a long day. She stood, took the plate and put more food on it without a word and set it down in front of him with a small, final click. He ate all of it. At 6:50 the next morning, Yoon Jae-hyuk came down the stairs and found his mother in the hallway. Coat, handbag, shoes on, lipstick correct. Where are you going? We are going to Itaewon, she said. You're driving. I have Shinkite, she called past him, to the man standing by the front door with a tablet in his hand who had learned many years ago exactly how to survive in this house. Madam. Does he have anything before 10? Kite looked at the tablet. He looked at his employer. He looked at the tablet again. He has a call with Busan at 8:30, he said, which can be moved. Thank you, Kite. Your mother raised you well. She'll be glad to hear it, madam. Jae-hyuk stared at his chief of staff with the expression of a man watching a soldier walk over to the other army in broad daylight. They drove to Itaewon. Tracy's kitchen was on a small street behind the bank, exactly as the card said, and it was smaller than Jae-hyuk had pictured. 9 tables, plastic chairs, the good kind, the ones that don't wobble. A glass counter at the front with trays behind it steaming under lights, and a hand-painted board on the wall listing what there was that day, and at the bottom, 4 lines in blue paint. No delivery. Food leaves hot or it doesn't leave. Numbers only. No reservations. Phones face down at the counter. If it finishes, it has finished. Come earlier. Jae-hyuk read the board twice. What is this? It's a rule board. For a restaurant? It's her house, his mother said, and took a plastic tag from the box by the door. Number 12, sit down. There were at that hour 11 people ahead of them. Jae-hyuk had not been 11th in a line since university. He sat on a plastic chair with his coat folded across his knees and his phone in his hand, and a girl of about 21 in an apron came past with a tray, stopped, and pointed at his phone with her chin. Face down, please. I'm not at the counter. You will be. She smiled at him, enormous, unbothered smile. Practice. Behind the glass counter, a woman was moving. Jae-hyuk watched her without meaning to, the way you watch anybody who is extremely good at something. She served with both hands. She never looked at the pot she was reaching for. She knew every person's order before they said it. The man in the taxi uniform got extra pepper without asking. The 2 students got the same thing with 2 spoons. An old man came in, and she called out something to the kitchen before he was fully through the door. There was a woman working beside her, older, heavier set, with a voice like a gate, who ran the queue and did not care who anybody was. Emmy, Tracy said, the fish is finishing. Then it will finish, said Emmy to the entire room as a warning. Then Tracy looked up and saw Madame Oknam, and her whole face opened. Ma, you came. I told you I would come. Come, come, come. And she was already coming around the counter, wiping her hands, and she took Madame Oknam's hand in both of hers, and Madame Oknam's chin did something small and undignified, and she got it back under control fast. This is my son, she said, Yoon Jae-hyuk. Tracy turned. Jae-hyuk had stood up because his mother was standing. He put out his hand. Thank you for what you did for my mother. It's nothing. It was not nothing. Whatever you spent, said Tracy. That was all she said, 1 syllable. But she said it with her eyebrows, and something in Jae-hyuk's spine sat up straighter, and the sentence he had been building died where it stood. I paid for it, she said pleasantly. It's finished. That's not what I want from you." "Then what do you want?" "Number 12, said Emmy from the counter. "That's you," said Tracy. "Go and eat. 12 is a good number. You'll still get fish." He ate. He ate a plate of jollof rice and stewed beef and fried plantain at a plastic table with his elbows too close to a stranger's, in a room where a girl called Kim Da-eun kept refilling water without being asked, and Emmy shouted a running commentary on the state of the fish. His mother talked the entire time. He barely heard her. Because the food was, and Jae-hyuk had eaten in 4 countries that month, the food was extraordinary. He put his fork down when the plate was empty and sat back and said nothing for a moment. "Well," said his mother, "it's good. It's good. It's very good." His mother made a sound that meant she was going to tell this to people later. On the way out, he stopped at the counter. Tracy was already serving someone else, and she glanced up. "Do you cater?" he said. "Corporate. My company does about 200 lunches a week, and the vendor we have is—" "No. You haven't heard the number." "I don't need the number." She put a scoop of rice on a plate, tapped the spoon, put the plate down, took the next tag. "I have 9 tables. If I do 200 lunches for you, I close 9 tables. Then in 1 year, you get tired of me, or you get a new vendor, or somebody in your office decides my food smells, and then I have no 200 lunches and no 9 tables. She smiled at him. "Thank you, though. Come back for the fish. Come earlier next time." He walked out into the street and stood by the car for a second before he got in. "What is it?" his mother said. "Nobody has said no to me like that since 2011. "Good," she said, and got in the car. 19 days later, Madame Jung Oknam collapsed in her own hallway. It was nothing dramatic in the moment, which is the frightening thing about it. She bent to pick up a shoe and the floor came up sideways, and the housekeeper found her sitting against the wall trying to explain that she was fine, and by the time Jae-hyuk got to the hospital, he had run 2 red lights and could not have told anybody the route he took. It was her heart, and it was manageable, and the doctors used the word manageable 11 times because they could see the state of the man in the corridor. But she came home smaller. That was the thing nobody had warned him about. She came home and she was quieter, and she got tired at 4 in the afternoon, and worst of all, she stopped eating. Food would go in front of her, and she would move it around the plate and say she'd have it later. The housekeeper tried everything. The house cook, who had trained in Vienna, made her 6 different things in one day, and she took 2 bites of each and apologized to him, which was worse than refusing. Jae-hyuk had Dr. Ryu Tae-min at the house 4 times in 1 week. Ryu had known them since Jae-hyuk was 14. He examined her, and he sat with her, and he came out into the corridor and said what he always said, which was that the body was healing and the appetite would return. "It's been 11 days. Jae-hyuka, she's lost weight." "I know. So what do I do?" Ryu, who at that exact moment had a container of Madame Oknam's honeyed walnuts in his coat pocket that she had made for him back in spring and frozen, and who had been receiving her food for 19 years, and who was in that sense not an entirely independent party, said, "Whatever she asks for, let her eat it. Anything. If she asks for it, that's the body talking. Don't argue with it." That was on a Sunday. On Monday morning, his mother sat up in bed and said, "I want Tracy's fish." Jae-hyuk sent Kaite. Kaite came back 90 minutes later, empty-handed, with the expression of a man who has been somewhere he did not expect to be. "Sir, where's the food?" "They don't deliver." "I know they don't deliver. That's why I sent you." "No, sir. They don't deliver, and they don't do collections for people who aren't the person eating, and they don't take orders by phone, and there's a board on the wall." Kaite looked down at his tablet as if it might have an answer on it. "I offered to pay 4 times the price. And the older lady, Emmy, asked me if I was deaf or only slow." Jae-hyuk stared at him. "Sir, I have negotiated with the Busan Port Authority. Get my coat." And that was how it started. The first day, he went at 1 in the afternoon and the fish had finished. Emmy told him so with a kind of joy. He took what was left, which was rice and stewed chicken, and his mother ate a third of it, which was more than she had eaten in 11 days, and he stood in her doorway watching her eat and felt something in his chest that he had no filing system for. The second day, he went at 12:30 and got number 31 and waited 50 minutes and got fish. The third day, he sent Kite to hold a place in the queue and was informed by a girl of 21 with an enormous smile that the number belonged to the body standing in the room, and if the body changed, the number went to the back. Whose rule is that? Hers, said Kim Da-yoon, pointing at Tracy with a serving spoon. All of them are hers. The fourth day, he arrived at 11:40 in the morning and took tag number 47. He came in through the door with his coat still on and 3 cars idling outside and 4 men in dark suits taking up position on the pavement. And Emmy came around the counter faster than a woman that size should be able to move and put one hand flat on the chest of the first man through the door. Where are you people going? Ma'am, we're with... I know who you're with. Outside. We can't leave him. Outside. She pointed at the pavement like she was sending a dog to a mat. This is a restaurant. 9 tables. Where will 4 of you sit? On the fish? They looked at Jae-hyuk. Jae-hyuk looked at Emmy. Emmy looked at Jae-hyuk in a way that had ended discussions in 2 languages. Wait outside, he said. So they waited outside, all 4 of them, standing in a line on the pavement in their sunglasses in front of the glass, and the entire eatery ate its lunch while watching them the way you watch fish in a tank. Number 47, I said number 47, or step aside. Jae-hyuk moved up with his tag in his hand and his phone in the other, thumb still moving on it, because Busan had sent a number that was wrong and he was in the middle of saying so. Sir. Kim Da-yoon pointed at the counter. Phone, face down, house rule. He didn't move. She didn't blink. Somewhere behind him an old woman clicked her tongue and said, Ayan, so it's only him that has work. We're all waiting. And Yoon Jae-hyuk put his phone face down on the counter, picked up a plastic tray, and moved forward 1 step like everybody else. Tracy did not look up from the pot. Fish? Fish. How is your mother? She ate half yesterday. Now she looked up. Half of the plate or half of the fish? Half of the plate. Ah. She nodded slowly and reached past the fish and took a small container from under the counter and put it on his tray beside the plate. Take this. 2. Pepper soup. Tell her to drink it hot, not warm. Hot. If she drinks it warm, it won't work. How much for it? It's not for sale. It's for her. Tracy tapped the container lid. Next. He carried a plastic tray in a black coat to a table by the window, in front of 9 tables of people who had stopped pretending not to look, and he sat down and ate, and outside on the pavement 4 men in sunglasses stood in the sun. That night, his mother drank all of the pepper soup and asked for more the next day. By the end of the 2nd week, it had a shape. He went every day. He learned that Tuesday was the day the fish came in, and Wednesday was the day the fish was best. He learned that if he came at 11:40, he got a number in the 40s, and if he came at 11:15, he got one in the 20s, and if he came at 10:50, he got single digits, and that no amount of money moved the numbers, ever, in either direction. He learned the regulars. The taxi driver was Mr. Beck. The 2 students were Harin and her cousin, whose name he never got. The old man was Mr. Song, who came at noon exactly, and who told Jae-hyuk on the 5th day that he was standing too stiffly and it was making everyone tired. He learned that Kim Da-eun had on day 6 finally typed his name into her phone while standing behind the drinks fridge, and that the sound she made was heard in the kitchen, and that Emmy had come out to see who had died. Do you know who? He's number 22, said Emmy. Emmy, he owns 22. Said Emmy, and went back to the kitchen. And he learned on a Thursday what happens when you get there late. He had a supplier crisis, and he left the office at 12:50, and by the time he walked into Tracy's kitchen at 1:20, there were 3 tables of people finishing up, and the trays behind the glass were empty and being wiped. It finished, Emmy said without looking sorry. Anything at all. It finished. There's rice. That rice is Da-yoon's lunch. Are you going to take a working girl's lunch? He drove home with nothing. His mother was sitting up in the living room with the television on, and she looked at his hands as he came in, both of them, twice, and then at his face. There's no food? It finished. It finished. I got there at 1:20. I had a supplier. He knew that He had known that since he was 6 years old. I'll go early tomorrow. She turned back to the television. It's fine. I'll drink tea. Mother. I said it's fine. She adjusted the blanket over her knees with great care. You know, if I had a grandchild— Mother, I'm begging you. A grandchild would have gone at 10, she said to the television. A grandchild would have said, Halmione, I'll go early and stand in the line, and I would have had my food by 12 and I would be sleeping now. But no, I don't have a grandchild. I have a chairman. She sighed, a long one, engineered in a laboratory. A chairman who cannot bring soup. He stood in the middle of his mother's living room, 38 years old, with 412 stores, and he thought about the phrase, a chairman who cannot bring soup, and understood that it would follow him for the rest of his natural life. The next morning he was in the queue at 10:50, and the morning after that, he was there at 10:30, and the trays weren't out yet, and he stood by the counter with his tag while Emmy carried a crate through and Tracy called from the kitchen that the second pot was catching, and Dae-eun was struggling with a stack of plates that needed washing before the rush because the boy who normally did it had exams. Jae-hyuk looked at the sink. He looked at the clock. He took off his coat. 2 weeks after that, Shin Ki-tae flew back from Singapore on a Tuesday with a folder that could not be emailed, landed at Incheon at 10:05, was told his employer was in Itaewon, and walked into a kitchen the size of a parking space at 11:15. Take off the coat if you're going to do that. You'll ruin it. It's fine. It's not fine. Roll the sleeves. Ki-tae stood in the doorway holding the folder and watched the chairman of Yusung Holdings, a company that owned 412 retail stores, 16 warehouses, and a port concession in Busan, standing at a sink in a borrowed apron, washing plates. The folder slipped. It hit the floor. Nobody picked it up. Sir, Ki-tae said carefully, the board is waiting. The board can wait. Jae-hyuk didn't look up. The queue moves faster when I do this. And somewhere behind him, a woman with her back turned, plating rice like she hadn't heard a single word of it, said, 2 more baskets and don't leave water on the rims? Ki-tae picked up his folder. He went outside. He sat in the car for 4 minutes. Then he took out his phone and started a private note, which he titled, with no explanation, Record. And the first line he typed in it was, he does not want his mother to talk to him about grandchildren. That is the entire reason. I want this written down somewhere in case one day I am asked. If you're enjoying this, drop a comment and tell me what you would have done in that supermarket queue, and subscribe because the part where his mother finds out is coming. Here is what Jae-hyuk did not know, and what Madam Jung Oknam had worked out in approximately 6 days. Her son was in love. She knew it the first time he came home from Itaewon and repeated something Tracy had said at the counter, repeated it exactly with the timing, and then laughed at it himself, alone in her kitchen. Her son had not laughed alone in her kitchen since he was in secondary school. So Madam Oknam, a woman who had prayed for one thing for 11 years, did what any reasonable person in her position would do. She got worse, not badly, nothing that would frighten anybody, just tired on the days it mattered, just a small weakness in the voice on the phone, and she discovered, quite by accident and then entirely on purpose, a medical phenomenon of great interest. Her strength returned dramatically whenever Tracy Joe was in the house and departed the moment Tracy's car pulled out of the gate. She left her silk scarf at the eatery twice. She developed a hospital appointment on a Sunday morning, which is a day Tracy's kitchen does not open, so that her son was obliged to call Tracy personally and ask, as a favor, for 1 flask of pepper soup and, because she also required him out of the house, to go and collect it from Tracy's own apartment. She telephoned the eatery on a Wednesday afternoon during rush and spoke to Tracy for 41 minutes about her hip. She began referring to Tracy in front of her son as my daughter. Not like a daughter, not she is a daughter to me, just, my daughter said the fish comes on Tuesday. Mother? What? You know what? I don't know what. And once, memorably with Tracy standing 3 feet away holding a flask, Madame Oknam informed the room that her son could not sleep unless the blanket was tucked under his feet, could not cook so much as an egg, was 38 years old, had all his own teeth, and was, she made a small gesture, available. Mother, am I lying? Do you have teeth or you don't have teeth? Tracy laughed so hard she had to put the flask down. That was the thing Jae-hyuk noticed and could not stop noticing. Tracy laughed at his mother, and his mother enjoyed being laughed at by her, and in 11 years of women being introduced to Madame Jung Oknam, that had never once happened. The sad part came in October, on an evening when the eatery had closed early because the gas cylinder finished, and the two of them ended up sitting on the plastic chairs at table 4 with the lights half off and a plate of leftover plantain between them. He asked her about the supermarket, about what she had said outside on the pavement. "You said you were used to it." "I am." "Used to it how?" Tracy turned her water bottle a half turn on the table. "I came here at 24, she said, with a friend. She had a job for me that was not a job, but I didn't know that until I got here. 2 months later, she went back home and I stayed. Because how do you go back after 2 months? What do you tell people?" She turned the bottle back. "I started with a cooler, just a cooler and a table, near a building site, selling rice at lunchtime to whoever would buy. And people bought. Plenty of people bought, and they were kind. But there was a man, there is always one man who used to walk past every day and hold his nose. Every day, for 4 months, he would see me from far and start holding his nose and his friends would laugh." She smiled slightly. "One day he said in front of everybody that my food smelled like something they feed to dogs." Jae-hyuk did not say anything. "I cried that night," she said, "not because of him, because that was the day I had decided I would finally send money home, and after that day I couldn't sell anything for a week, and I didn't send it." She looked up. "My mother was sick. I was saving to fly home. I kept saying next month, when the business is better. And then it was better. It really was better. I had the shop by then, and I bought the ticket, and I was going to travel on the 12th. She stopped. "She died on the 9th. The room was very quiet. Somewhere behind them, the fridge hummed. "So when your mother stood there in that supermarket," Tracy said, "and those people were laughing at her, and she was doing everything not to cry. I didn't step out of that line because I'm brave. I stepped out because I know exactly what it feels like to stand in a place where you have done nothing wrong and be made small in front of strangers, and I know what it costs later when nobody's watching." She shrugged. "That's all it was." Jae-hyuk sat with that for a long moment. Then he said, "Which Hanmart?" "What?" "The supermarket. My mother's. Which branch?" "Yongsan, the one on the main road." He nodded slowly and did not explain why, and drove home, and at 11:15 that night he was sitting in his study with his laptop open on the store directory, looking at a photograph of a shopfront with his own company's logo above the door. 412 stores. He had built it store by store from a single warehouse. He knew the number the way he knew his own age. He had never once thought about what happened inside them at 10 o'clock in the morning. Kitae came into the office at 7 the next morning to find him already there, and by 9 there was a report on the Yongsan branch. Staffing levels, shift lengths, the fact that the branch had been running 4 cashiers short for 5 months, that Bae Hyo-rin had worked 19 days without a day off in October, that a complaint form existed which nobody had ever been trained to fill in. "Sir, do you want her dismissed?" Jae-hyuk looked at the file for a long time. "No." "Sir?" 19 days without a day off. He closed the folder. "Whose fault is that? Hers?" He did 3 things. He put 4 more people on that branch. He wrote a training program for every till in every one of his 412 stores and made the first module about older customers and made himself sit through it. And on a Thursday afternoon, he walked into the Yongsan branch, unannounced, with no coat and no cars outside, and asked to speak to Bae Hyo-rin. She thought she was being fired. She started crying before he said anything. "On the 14th of August, he said, you shouted at a woman at your till who had lost her card." "Sir, I'm so sorry, That was my mother." Hyo-rin made a sound like a small animal. "You are not being dismissed," he said. "You were on your 19th day without rest and nobody had trained you, and that is my fault, not yours. But you will write her a letter, in your own hand. Not for me. She will never show it to me. And if I ever hear that you have spoken to another customer that way, that will be a different conversation." She wrote the letter. Madame Oknam read it twice and put it in the drawer with her husband's watch and never mentioned it to her son, and he never asked. Gu Man-shik of the wallet joke discovered 8 months later that the supply contract for his phone accessory kiosk ran through a Yusung subsidiary and appeared at Jae-hyuk's office building with a fruit basket the size of a child. He got as far as reception. The contract was not canceled. Jae-hyuk had a rule about not using a company to settle personal accounts. But Manshik spent a full year believing that it might be, which Emmy later described as the most efficient punishment she had ever heard of. And somewhere in all of that, between the plates and the numbers and the pepper soup, Yoon Jae-hyuk stopped dreading 11:40 in the morning and started building his day around it. He did not notice. His mother noticed in 6 days. Ki-tae noticed in 3 weeks and wrote it in the record. Kim Da-yoon noticed and told the kitchen. Emmy had known since the 2nd week and had said nothing to anybody, because Emmy's position was that men should be allowed to arrive at obvious conclusions in their own time, as slowly as they need to, like a pot. The man himself worked it out on a Tuesday in November, in traffic, when he realized he was smiling at a red light because he was thinking about something a woman had said to him about rice. He pulled over. He sat in the car with the hazards on for 11 minutes. Then he drove to the office, closed the door, and said, "Ki-tae, how long do people date before they get married?" Ki-tae, holding a quarterly report, did not blink because he had been preparing for this moment for 2 months. "It varies, sir. Give me a number." 1 to 3 years. That's too long. "Sir, what's the shortest that isn't insulting?" Ki-tae put down the quarterly report. What followed was, in Ki-tae's own written assessment, the strangest 6 weeks of my professional life. The chairman of Yusung Holdings began to research, not casually, properly, the way he researched an acquisition. He read about Nigerian weddings and then about Igbo weddings and Yoruba weddings and Efik weddings, because he discovered on day 2 that Nigerian wedding was not one thing and was appalled at himself for having assumed otherwise. He read about bride price. He read about introduction ceremonies. He found out that there was an order to things, and that the order mattered, and that a man who skipped a step was announcing something about himself. He asked Kai-tae to find out discreetly whether Tracy's father was alive. He was. Her father was alive in Uyo, 71, retired, with a bad knee and a WhatsApp habit. He made a folder. And in the folder there was a page headed Family. Approach and a page headed Requirements to confirm, and a page on which he had written, in his own handwriting, a list of the things he thought she liked, and the list was 7 items long, and one of them was, does not like being thanked with money. Do not offer money. See August 14th. He tried to raise it with his mother sideways. Mother, hypothetically. She did not look up from her crossword. No, you haven't heard it. You've said hypothetically to me 4 times in your life, Jae-hyuka, and every single time it meant no. She filled in a word. Hypothetically what? He lost his nerve. Nothing. He tried 3 more times over 2 weeks and lost his nerve 3 more times, which is how a man who had once told a room of 40 shareholders that he was closing a division ended up unable to complete a sentence to his own mother, and he could not ask Tracy out. That was the other thing. He stood at that counter 4 times a week and he could not do it. He got as far as, "Are you free?" and then said, "On Thursday, is the fish coming Thursday?" And Tracy said no. Tuesday, same as always, and Emmy dropped a spoon on purpose. Ki-tae, who had been raised well and was in a genuinely difficult position, offered advice. "You could take her somewhere impressive, sir." He took her to a restaurant with 2 Michelin stars where the courses came under domes. Tracy ate everything and was polite and asked what was in the 3rd one, and when the waiter explained, she said, "So it's pepper soup." And the waiter said no, and she said, "It's pepper soup, but shy." And Jae-hyuk laughed so hard he had to put his napkin over his face, and the sommelier looked over. But when they came out, she said gently, "That was lovely, don't do it again." "You didn't like it." "I liked it. I just don't want you to think that's what I'm here for." She looked at him under the streetlight. "Do you know what I liked more than that? The day you washed plates." He asked her properly 9 days later, at the sink, at 10:30 in the morning, with an apron on and his sleeves rolled and no cars outside because he had stopped bringing them. "I'd like to see you. Not here, not at my mother's house, not to collect anything, just you and me." Tracy put down the ladle. "You know what my life is." "I know it's 9 tables. It's 9 tables and it opens at 11 and it doesn't close because I'm tired. And I'm not going to stop, Jae-hyuk. Not for you, not for anybody. I have people who work here who have rent. I don't want you to stop." Men say that. "I'm not asking you to be a wife who cooks in my house." He turned to face her. I'm asking you to let me be a man who queues in yours. Emmy in the doorway went back into the kitchen without a word and stood there with her hand over her mouth for a full minute. Tracy said yes, telling his mother was harder than any of it. He waited until Sunday. He came to her house, and he sat down opposite her at the same table where she had once counted his spoons, and he said, Mother, I want to get married. Madame Jung Oknam looked up. Then her face changed, and it was not the face he had been expecting at all. Don't. Mother, don't do that. Her voice cracked in the middle of it. Don't play with that one. Anything else, I can take a joke. You can laugh at me about the umbrella, about the board meeting, fine. But don't play with the one thing I have asked God for. I'm not playing. You're playing. Mother, I am not playing. 11 years. She hit the table with the flat of her hand and her eyes were full. 11 years I have asked you, and every time you look at your phone, and now you sit down in my house on a Sunday and tell me, with a straight face, it's Tracy. Her mouth was still open on the next sentence. Nothing came out of it. It's Tracy, he said again. I asked her. She said yes. I want to marry her, and I want to do it properly. Her father is alive. There's an order to it. There's an introduction first, and He took a breath, and it came out of him in a rush, and this was the part he had rehearsed in the car, and it did not survive contact. I've made a folder, Mother. I've written everything down. I don't want to do one step of it wrong. I need you to look at it and tell me what I've missed. Madame Oknam stood up. She walked out of the room. He sat at the table for a full minute, and then he heard from the corridor the sound of his mother crying in the manner of a woman who does not intend to be heard, and he sat very still, and he did not go in because he knew her. 90 seconds later, she came back with her face fixed and her chin up and sat down. Where is the folder? He gave it to her. She opened it. She read the first page. She read the second page. On the third page, she stopped and looked at him over the top of it. You wrote, do not offer money. Yes. Why? Because I offered her money once, in August. He said it evenly. She said, ah. His mother put the folder down and started to laugh, and it went on for some time, and it turned into something else halfway through, and she covered her face with both hands, and Jae-hyuk came around the table and knelt beside her chair the way he had not done since he was a boy. Ma. I'm fine. Ma. I'm fine. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand. 19 years I've been asking that doctor when you would settle down. 19 years he's been eating my walnuts and telling me to be patient. Then she blew her nose, straightened her back, put both hands flat on the table, and became a completely different woman. Right, said Madame Jung Oknam. Sit down. I'm sitting. Not there. There. She was already up. She went to the cupboard in the hallway. The deep one, the one he had assumed held bedding, and came back with a large box file, dark green, soft at the corners with age. She opened it on the table. Inside there were fabric swatches, a guest list, in her handwriting, on paper that had yellowed, 3 tailor's cards, a page of hall names with prices, and the prices were from years ago, a ring design cut out of a magazine and folded twice. Jae-hyuk stared at it. Mother, how long has this been in that cupboard? Since 2017, she said, licking her thumb and going through the guest list. Your folder is good. Your folder is very good for a man, but your folder is about her family. She looked up, and there was something almost frightening in her eyes now. Somebody has to handle ours. The introduction happened in Uyo in March. Yoon Jae-hyuk flew for 21 hours with a chief of staff, a mother, 6 suitcases, and a folder, and sat in a living room full of Tracy's aunties and uncles and cousins in a shirt his mother had chosen, and answered every question that was put to him, and there were many. Her father asked him, through a nephew who was translating and enjoying himself far too much, what exactly he did with 412 stores. Her Auntie Grace asked him whether he could kneel, and he said yes, and she said, show us, and he did, and the room came down. Madame Jung Oknam sat beside. Tracy's father with her hands folded and made herself understood in a language she did not speak, largely through the medium of showing photographs, and by the third hour the two of them were arguing amiably about which of their children had been more difficult, and by the fifth hour Tracy's father had put his hand on her arm and said something that the nephew declined to translate, and everybody laughed anyway. They married in Seoul in October and in Uyo 2 weeks after that because Madame Oknam took the position that one wedding was for the couple and the other was for the mothers, and that a mother-in-law who did not travel was not serious. Emmy catered the Seoul reception and refused all payment, and then quietly presented Jae-hyuk with an itemized bill for the ingredients, at cost, on principle, which he framed. Kim Da-eun cried through the entire ceremony and had to be relieved of her camera duties. Shin Ki-tae read a speech that was 11 sentences long and entirely factual, and the 8th sentence was, "In February of last year, I flew from Singapore with a folder that could not be emailed, and I found the chairman of Yusung Holdings washing plates in a kitchen in Itaewon, and when I told him the board was waiting, he said the board could wait." He looked up from the paper. "I did not understand it then. I understand it now." Then he sat down, and Jae-hyuk had to look at the ceiling for a while. Dr. Ryu Tae-min gave a toast in which he confessed, publicly, to 19 years of accepting food from the bride's mother-in-law, and described himself as a compromised man. Tracy's kitchen did not close. It moved 18 months later 3 streets over to a place with 82 tables and a proper kitchen and a training program, because 12 of the girls who had started as waitresses wanted to learn to cook properly, and Tracy had decided that was a better use of her life than 9 tables. The rule board moved with it, repainted. Most of the lines survived. One did not, and the bigger kitchen came with a phone line, 4 riders, and a delivery map pinned beside the door, and on the first evening a bag of food went out on the back of a motorcycle instead of leaving in somebody's hands. Jae-hyuk stood in the doorway and watched the bike turn the corner. "You took down no delivery," he said. "I did." "You could have left that one." "Left it for what?" Tracy said. "Nobody has to queue anymore." "That's the problem." She looked at him then and understood exactly what he meant, and she laughed at him and told him to go and wash his hands, and that was the end of the queue. The first baby came in the 2nd year, a girl, 7 pounds and something, with her mother's mouth and her father's absolutely unmistakable eyebrows, and Madame Jung Oknam was in that corridor from 4 in the morning and would not sit down. When the nurse finally put the child in her arms, she did not say anything for a long moment. Then she said, to the baby, very quietly, in the tone of a woman concluding an argument that had lasted 11 years, "There you are." The second came 20 months after that. A boy this time, who screamed for the first 4 months of his life in a way that his father described as commercial, and who could only be settled by being walked up and down the hallway by his grandmother, who claimed this was a terrible burden, and who did it every single night. And on the day of that boy's naming ceremony, with the house full and the food going round, and her son standing in the corner of the room holding a sleeping baby against his shoulder with an expression on his face that no shareholder had ever seen, Madame Jung Oknam came up beside her daughter-in-law and took her arm. "2 is good," she said. "Ma, I have just given birth." "2 is very good." "Ma, I'm only saying that in my family it was always 3. Said Madame Oknam, looking out at the room. 3 is a family. 2 is—" She moved her hand from side to side. 2 is a pair of shoes. Tracy put her head back and laughed until she had to hold on to the doorframe, and across the room her husband looked over at the sound the way he had been looking over at that sound for 4 years, and his mother saw him do it and said nothing at all and drank her tea. "Sit with me for a minute before you go. The first thing is this. How you treat a stranger who cannot repay you is the truest measure of who you are, because that is the only time nobody is watching and nothing is owed." Tracy Joe stepped out of that queue for a woman she had never met, with no expectation of anything, and she was rewarded, but the reward is not the point of the story. The point is that she would have done it if nothing had ever come of it, and she had done it many times before when nothing did. The second is that dignity is not decided by what people say to you. It is decided by what you refuse to become in front of them. Madame Oknam kept her chin up at that counter. Tracy kept her voice low. Neither of them matched what was thrown at them, and both of them walked out of that store with more than they walked in with. The third is that a person who is used to being insulted has been carrying something for a long time, and I'm used to it is never a small sentence. It took Jae-hyuk months to understand what those 5 words cost, and understanding them changed the way 412 stores were run. The fourth is about power. A man who owns everything discovered he could not buy fish, not because anybody was punishing him, but because somebody else had built something with rules of her own, and those rules did not bend for money, and they were not supposed to. The humbling of Yoon Jae-hyuk was not a defeat. It was the first honest thing that had happened to him in years, and it gave him a wife, a mother who could look at him again, and 2 children walking around a house that used to have nothing in it but the sound of a television. And the last one is for the mothers, and for the sons who are tired of hearing it. Madame Jung Oknam was ridiculous. She faked her weakness. She abandoned her scarf in a restaurant twice. She talked about a hip for 41 minutes. And she kept a wedding in a cupboard for 6 years, like a woman keeping a lamp lit in a window. She was ridiculous, and she was also right. She was not asking her son for grandchildren. She was asking him to build a life large enough to hold other people in it, because she had watched him build everything else and leave that one thing empty. He got there eventually. He got there in an apron, at a sink, in a kitchen the size of a parking space. If this story blessed you, drop a comment and tell me which part made you laugh the most, share it with somebody who needs to hear it today, and subscribe for more stories like this one. I'll see you in the next one.